as we get started. Jeff mentioned that I began my manufacturing career when I was 21. But the career I'm currently in, giving speeches, seminars, and workshops, I started that quite a long time ago. I actually began public speaking at the age of 9, and that was not out of desire. That was out of necessity. You see, I grew up on a hog and dairy farm in southern Minnesota, and I was the youngest of 4 sons, no sisters. And I grew up in a position-centered family, not a person-centered family where everyone would have an equal say or an equal vote. There was a true hierarchy in the family where my dad had the most authority, then my mom, then it went from oldest to youngest, and I was the youngest. So what would happen around the dining room table is my dad would say something, then my mom would say something, then Cabot, Kelly, Corey, and then they changed the subject. I always had a terrible time getting into the conversation, but in 4-H, I could get up in front of a club once a month and give a 5 or 10 minute speech without interruption, and really haven't stopped since. And I went to school in Mankato State, became a college dropout when that little manufacturing company came up for sale in my hometown. And the reason the business was for sale is because the gentleman that had started the company in 1972 had already suffered a massive heart attack by 1983, so it looked like something I should get involved with. And it was a stressful business. The presentation I deliver the most often is called STP, Stress, Time, and Procrastination Management. And the presentation I deliver second most often is handling difficult people, dealing with people you can't stand. But anyway, the business did grow to 3 companies in 3 states. Left those companies back in 1989 to do this, to provide speeches, seminars, and workshops. All the years we were growing those companies, we'd run to Mankato or Sioux Falls or Spencer, Iowa, anywhere Career Track, Dale Carnegie, or Skill Path for offering seminars. And we found that we could go there for a few hours and learn some information we could apply for a few years. And that's the type of information I'd like to share with you over lunch. Information that will work if you put it to work. Information, frankly, that's backed up from years to next week with research you can trust. The information I'm going to share with you, it's not something that came to me in a dream in the middle of the night. I just want to forewarn you, I'm going to make some suggestions over the next half an hour or so, but I'm not necessarily going to give you advice. The main reason I'm not going to give you advice is, well, frankly, Socrates was a man that went around giving people good advice, and I understand they poisoned him. And I was going to join you for lunch. So I'm just going to make a lot of suggestions today, but all these strategies will work if you put them to work. Now, we have a handout for you. Christina has a handout she'll be dropping off. Now, the reason I provide the handout is because even if you were awfully interested in what I had to say or how I presented the information, listening retention is only about 25%, which means we should really cover this presentation 4 times. So we wouldn't finish up until about 3 o'clock this afternoon. But with the handout, listening retention will jump as high as 40 to 60%. And if you have any questions anytime on anything, please feel free to ask, because you'll have the content in the handout. Because in a question and answer session, you retain nearly 80% of the information, even if it's not your question. So I would like this to be as interactive as possible. And the other reason I provide the handout is because if you found me boring, or the information boring, listening retention could drop as low as 5%, which means we should really cover this presentation 20 times. So we'll finish up until late tomorrow night. So I'd like that handout to be what you go to when you're wondering what to do when you're faced with change. Whether it's something that comes out of nowhere, a disruptive technology, someone that's competing with you on the other side of the country, the other side of the world, but we need to be more agile. So let's take a look, all of you have your handouts, and what's the big deal and why we talk about change? Well, there's 3 key drivers of change: technology, information, and people. And when we take a look at technology, it's said that well over 80% of the world's technological advances have occurred since 1900. The first practical industrial robot was introduced in the 1960s. By 1982, there were approximately 32,000 robots being used. Today, about 20 million. Now, I was in manufacturing in the 80s, and we used to have a rule in the industry that I was in that before you would invest in automated equipment or robotics, that machine needed to replace at least 7 jobs. And if it didn't replace at least 7 jobs, just keep paying the payroll, because by the time you got the capital investment out, technology would have changed again anyway. So if we use that same old multiplier, it's much higher today than it was back then. 7 robots, or 7 jobs for every robot, 20 million robots. That's 140 million jobs in this country that have been replaced through robotics. That's more full-time jobs that exist in this country. And then when it comes to information, more information was produced in the last 30 years than the previous 5,000 years. A weekday edition of the New York Times contains more information than a person was likely to come across in a lifetime in 17th century England. I always like to test statistics, so I picked up a 13-week subscription to the New York Times. There's more information in there than you need to know in a lifetime. But because technology can pump it out, we think people are probably going to read it, and they do. So took about 100, it took about 7 million years to get 1 billion people on the face of the earth, another 130 years to reach 6 billion. We're going to have about 10 billion people standing around looking at each other shortly. So more information reaching more people, of course, more change. So in your handout, what we're going to be looking at is how do we have to make these adjustments in our industry? So let's take a look at this video and see if we can learn anything from
Hello,
this.
This is Kip Welch.
Oh, this is kind of interesting. That's one thing that didn't work.
Communication. And the question is, what happens when I pull out the overhead projector?
What happens when the battery went dead on that speaker? Here we go.
Over the years, I've delivered more than 2,500 presentations with my trusty old overhead projector. However, lately, the younger generations don't seem to appreciate my overhead projector and transparencies. Well, there are some differences in the expectations across the generations when it comes to audiovisual equipment and technology. Veterans and traditionals, well, they'd appreciate the overhead projector. It's light and it's bright, and it must be pretty important information if you go to the work of putting it on a transparency. Baby boomers would get a kick out of it and reminisce about overhead projectors and slide projectors. Generation Xers would think you are trapped in the 80s and would prefer PowerPoint presentations with headlines, bullet points, and graphics. Millennials, well, they would squirm in their seats and they would prefer whiz-bang video and multimedia productions. But I love my overhead projector. It reminds me of E.T., and I loved that movie. It's hard to let go.
That's nearly pathetic to watch, isn't it? Not too long, I was giving a presentation to a CEO forum, and a woman came up to me after the event, and she said, "You know, that other guy in the videos with you, he's kind of distracting." I said, you know that's me, don't you? She says, "No, it's not." And I go, "Yes, and I have to work with him every day." But sometimes we have to stop some of the things we've been doing because they seem to be a little bit out of date. So it's a metaphor when it comes to your industry. For mine, of course, the overhead projector. And I have, and did deliver 2,500 presentations or so with that overhead projector. And what I find so interesting about change is when the power was off, I was thinking about this. I was working with the Minnesota Rural Electric Association not too long ago, and I called my dad, 91, still farming, and I said, "Dad, when did we get electricity on the farm?" Because I remember a great big green box being installed by the garage. And he said, "Well, we always have power. We just didn't have enough power when we bought that farm for the cows we were milking at the time, so we needed a bigger electrical power transformer," I think he said. And I said, "Oh, okay." He goes, "But Pa," and that's Grandpa, his dad. "Let's see, when did he get electricity on the farm?" Let's see, I went to World War II and came back 2 years at the University of Minnesota, and I was renting Mittendorf's farm. So it must have been 1949 or so that Grandpa got electricity on the farm. Then it hit me. My dad went to country school, high school, World War II, University of Minnesota for 2 years, and was farming on his own for a year or two by candlelight and lantern. My father. Can you imagine the changes? Not too long ago, I was looking in the local paper where I grew up, the Plain Dealer. My parents gave us a lifetime subscription to the Plain Dealer. And there was a couple in there celebrating their 80th wedding anniversary. 80 years of bliss. He was 101. She was 99, so he's robbing the cradle there. But, can you imagine how much your life has changed in 100 years? So we really have to think about when it comes to these changes, what kind of an impact does it have? Now, there's a difference between change and transition. Change is overnight. Change is a change in a system, a new policy, a new role, a new job, a new industry, and that can happen quickly. External, sometimes we create it, sometimes we're just a victim of it. But transition is personal, psychological. It's how we respond to that. It's whether we gasp or we're excited, or whether it's anxiety. But it's a foot dragging, the other breath comments. It's the concerns, the worries, the hesitations. And what I try to do is help people become quick change artists, to recognize the change, go through the transition more quickly, because we know the steps. According to William Bridges, the first thing that happens is something needs to end. For me, it was the overhead projector. I really like that, though, because they're so flexible. I could change slides anytime. I could adjust. I could throw in some funny stuff when it needed to be. Don't have that flexibility anymore with PowerPoint, and so sometimes, I kind of miss that. And people will miss it when things change, and we got to recognize that individual feels a loss. It's not the change, it's the loss. Yesterday I came to work, I was completely confident. Yesterday when I came to work, I was completely competent. Well, all that's been taken away now. I'm not quite as confident, and I'm not sure if I'm going to catch on to the new system. So you got to realize that it really isn't the loss, it's the grief. They're kind of going through a grief process. And then, of course, we have to consider the neutral zone. Can't go back to the way things used to be. Not quite sure how they're going to be. And that creates quite a bit of stress. But we still have to launch a new beginning. There needs to be a date and a time. We draw a line in the sand that we're going to move forward. We're going to take action. But throughout all of that, we have to take care of ourselves, because then we can help others get through that transition too. So in your handout at the bottom of the first page, when it comes to transition and it starts with an ending, the sad thing is you got to figure out who's losing what. It could be status, turf, title, it could be some control, it could be a division of department, sense of competence, and then what's over for everybody? What will everybody miss because of the change? And then don't be surprised by overreaction. It's their career, it's their job. So much of our self-esteem, so much of our self-concept is what we do. Usually one of the first few sentences when we talk with each other, so what do you do for a living? Because so much of our self-concept is what we do. So when that's being modified or feels like it's being under attack, of course people are going to take it personally. And we say, well, you shouldn't take it personally. Well, it is personal. This is how I feed my family. This is how I pay my bills. But then we have to focus on what is going to continue. We're still in business. We still serve our customers. We're still in this industry, and we need to focus on that. But we also need to mark the ending. Now, when I bought that first little manufacturing company, they had an employee guidebook that was about 27 pages thick. And I said, bring that in by Friday. I bought the property over on the business over 4th of July weekend. I said, bring that in by Friday. We stacked them all up. And I shoved them into the garbage can. I said, what we're going to come up with is a single page, kind of a code of conduct, how we're going to treat each other around here. I'm going to make it an odd number. I'll be on the team, but I need 4 of you to be on the team. And the reason I want it to be an odd number is if I hire someone I shouldn't have, I can make some adjustments so we can get rid of them. But I would like us to just... And by the time I left 7 years later, we had 2 pages of a code of conduct of how we're going to act and how we're going to treat each other, because I did hire some people I shouldn't have, and we had to make some adjustments in those rules so we could get rid of them. So this is what you need to do. You need to take a little bit of time and sit down and talk with the people that are going through change and ask, what's over for you? What do you seem to be struggling with? What's ending now? What's over for everybody? So they know they're not the only one. They haven't been singled out. And then what is continuing? You have to have those conversations. Talking soothes the stress. Not talking stirs trouble. So we want to make sure we feed them information, keep them involved in the conversation. Have those conversations. Now the next stage, of course, was the neutral zone. Can't go back to the way things used to be. It's kind of night time between yesterday and tomorrow. Anxiety rises, motivation falls about 50%. Absenteeism, 3 times the normal rate, because they just can't gut it out. They just don't want to face it. They just don't want to deal with the stress of it anymore. They'd rather just put the blanket over their head, leave the lights off, and snuggle up with the pillow. They just don't want to do it. So what we need to do instead is change the focus to innovation. This is research and development. We're not losing, we're learning. It's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. And we really have to ask a lot, how about this, how about that? Because you can cluster a lot of change under the same campaign as long as we keep having the conversations. And then tell them this is how we're going to experiment. Make sure you challenge the ideas. We have this lively debate, and then they'll be committed to the decision. I'm sure you've all read those 5 dysfunctions of the team, written by Patrick Lencioni. The first thing, the foundation, of course, is trust. Do they trust you or not? The way you build trust is you're open and honest. Tell them the information you have at the time, and they have genuine care and concern about them. So open and honest. The second is to engage in conflict. And if people don't trust each other, they don't engage in conflict. And then it just unravels. So we want to make sure that we have the discussions open for debate. So what we need to do with our team is ask these questions. What's causing you anxiety? What's causing you stress? What metaphor can we use to redefine the neutral zone? Now, I've been through a few recessions over the last 25 years in the speaking business. This last one, though, was different. I went into that first year of this recession-proof. I'm like, fantastic! Finally, I'm in a business that I'm recession-proof, and then I was wrong. And then my gross sales dropped about 30%. I went, wow, I'm not recession-proof. So I had to do some of the things I used to do in the old days to rebuild some markets that I had probably just, been coasting with, and build the business back up again. And I had the worst February I'd ever had in 20 years. And then I had the best October I ever had in 20 years, the same year. So I came up with a metaphor for me as we go through these last 8 years or so, and that is that my business, my industry, is kind of like a roller coaster. The good news is, I love roller coasters. I love roller coasters. A lot of twists and turns, not quite sure it's going to be. Exhilarating, thrilling, terrifying, a lot of ups and downs. But thank goodness I like roller coasters. So you have to figure out what is a metaphor that works with you to get you through that change and transition. Then we have to launch a new beginning. We have to make sure we draw a line in the sand. This is where we're going. This is the direction we're going to take. And feelings feel frightening because they remember the times that we had these ideas and they didn't work out, so it always seems like a gamble. And they don't want to deal with the pain of failure again, so they're a little bit hesitant. How well thought out is this? And that's why we got to sell these 4 Ps. The purpose. There's a good reason why. The status quo isn't cutting it. We're not making the numbers. We're losing in the industry. Then what we have to do is make sure we share with them the plan. We're going to do this for a week, do this for a month, do this for a business quarter, do this for a year. Seems pretty well thought out. And then a picture. People have to see it before they believe it. I sometimes work with large hospitals that are going to move to a new healthcare campus because they've been gobbled up by a bigger system. And people say, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I can look out my window, see my car in the parking lot, bathroom is right around the corner. I don't want to go. And then the architect shows up and she has a model of the new campus. And she says, you see this model here, or this building here, and that plastic pond, that styrofoam tree there, and the fake grass, and right there where that fake duck is swimming in there? Your offices are going to be in this 3rd floor overlooking that pond. And everybody's like, well, when's it going to be done? When do we get to go? Just 15 minutes ago, they didn't want to go at all. Now they're wondering, why didn't you have this done yet? Hurry up. So people kind of have to see it before they believe it. Go somewhere, demonstrate it, role play it. Go to someone that's a supplier or vendor or somebody else in your industry that's willing to open the doors so people can go and see it. Then they'll believe it. And then the last is the part they play. If you've ever been downsized, right-sized, or ostracized, the first thing people look at is the organizational chart, see if their name is still on it. They go, good, good. Well, I'm over here. I used to be over here. Well, this is the part you're going to play. That shouldn't have been a surprise. Somebody should have had that conversation long in advance. And then we want to make sure we have little bitty steps that we can recognize success so people feel confident that this is pretty well thought out. Then we get them through the change. So, what's the purpose? What's the picture? What's the plan? What's the part they're going to play? Spoon 3, food. Spoon, I'm a professional speaker. Spoon feed. Those 4 Ps, and I'll tell you what, people will follow you through fire. You don't sell those 4, they're not going to support you at all. So, you got to take care of yourself. Even the changes we want, those of you that have tried to make changes in your life, still are difficult, still are stressful. So when it comes to taking care of yourself, you got to figure out what's over for you too. Because there was some comfort, there was some confidence that you enjoyed with the old system, and that's not going to be what you're going to be enjoying going forward. So it could be some other things, more interpersonally or intrapersonally. It could be a dream you had because of restructuring, that position in the organization no longer exists. And after you've dedicated 10 or 15 years to the organization, you're not going to move into that position. So that can leave kind of a bad taste in your mouth. It could be an understanding about your boss. I still think there's a couple of people that are kind of still disappointed in how things went back in the 80s when I was in manufacturing. Because when we shoved the handbooks into the garbage can, I said, this is the plan. We're going to have 5 companies in 5 states in the next 10 years. They're going to be about 110 miles apart. We'll control the market. We'll make a ton of money, pay as much as I can. We had 3 companies in 3 states, 6 years. Wrong plan. Wrong plan. The environmental laws changed. Never were quite as profitable, balancing 3 different sets of environmental laws in 3 states as we were if we would have just stayed in 1 state. Sold the company in Iowa to a good competitor, sold the company in South Dakota to our biggest customer, which pulled us out there. And then I retired the shares and gave the company originally bought to my brother. And I was invested in real estate and went on and came to the Twin Cities. So here I had been for years saying, we're going east, we're going east, we're going east. And one day I said, actually, I'm going to go northeast. And there are going to be 5 companies in 5 states. We're going to sell a couple and stay with this one. And I was gone. So it could be an understanding of the boss. It could be a belief about yourself. I taught at the Minnesota State Colleges and universities part-time for the last 24 years. But I did have an opportunity to teach full-time at Mankato State back in 1993 to 1995. And I taught 3 classes in the morning so I could still get back to the Twin Cities to protect my speaking business in the afternoon. And then I taught a Friday morning class, and I could still get back for an afternoon presentation if I booked it. But it was an experimental class, 350 students in a room, 12 graduate students supported it. All I did was go and lecture, didn't have any office hours. I was hired 1 year at a time. Fall quarter, back then it was quarters, nominated outstanding faculty. Winter, nominated outstanding spring, nominated outstanding faculty. I resigned, they begged me back. I taught fall, winter, spring, resigned, and they hired somebody else. Well, she taught that class that fall. Well, she was also nominated outstanding faculty, and in the winter, and in the spring, and you could have had a chimpanzee teach that class, and they would have been nominated outstanding faculty. It was a great textbook, It was a great workbook, and actually it was the 12 graduate students embedded in the class with pods of 25 students that really was the success of it. Had nothing really to do with me at all. I just tended to show up. So belief in yourself and your values, sometimes that takes a shot. And then, of course, the image you have of yourself and your career and how others will judge that based upon the changes that you face and the decisions that you make. So what you need to do is go back before you took this job, before you face these changes, and invest some time in your old relationships, in your old interests and hobbies, the things you enjoyed doing before you even took this job. Now this is called the residual self. Now when we talk about self-concepts, we usually think there's one. There's about 400 self-concepts. About 180 of them are pretty much in place by the time you graduate from high school. And that's called the residual self. That's why when you go back for your 20, 30, 40-year class reunion, it'll be 1 o'clock, it's last call, and your friends are hammered, and they go, you haven't changed a bit. You haven't changed a bit. I've been married, I have kids, I went back to college, I have a different career, I haven't changed a bit. But there's 180 self-concepts in your personality that simply haven't changed. So what we need to do when things are changing is go back there to kind of reconnect with who you are and what you really value, and then your life will be much broader than the silly little change or challenge that you face right now. And you have people say, you'll figure this out, you'll recover from this, you recover faster than anybody else. Then this one down here at the bottom. Making the most of change. Just show up, be present, tell the truth, and then let go. Covey used to talk about this. He called it the circle of concern. These are the things that keep us awake looking at the ceiling at night. Now we used to, it'd be like this. Let's say I ran this place. We all work for the same company. I'm the boss, and I step out one day and I say, you know what, there's going to be some changes around here. Some people gasp, uh-oh, because you think somebody's going to lose their job. That's right, employment. And if I lose my job, I might lose my income and my property, my house. Even a natural disaster, flood and fire, breaks the heart to see people's lives swept away. If I lose my job and lose my house, what will people think? Reputation. We've all known people with a great reputation, one dumb decision, one dumb act, and all disappears, and the first thing we ask is, what were they thinking? Because everyone will remember that one time. Oh yeah, but remember one time? Never be the same. So I worry about my job, I worry about loss of property, my reputation is damaged, it's going to affect my health. You know this, Jeff. You lose your health, there's a risk you can lose everything. Now that little circle in the middle is called the circle of influence. That's where you just keep showing up because other people are peeling off. You just keep showing up. Then when you're there, you be present, be engaged. Share the information you know, to really listen and empathize. I miss that too. I can understand the struggle. I can understand. Then they feel normal. Then they'll listen to logic. But if you deny them the emotion, they're not going to listen to logic because we're not listening to them. So we have to blend, tell the truth, and then go home. In your handout, you'll see somewhere around number 10 or so in those new strategies. I say really see yourself as a consultant. I love being a consultant. I walk into organizations and I say what you're doing there. I've seen people approach it differently. You might want to consider that. What you're doing there, I used to do that, and I do it this way. Save me about 5 minutes every hour. What you're doing there, stop that, and then I leave. So I care, but not that much. So when your organization is going through quite a bit of change, I'd like you to see yourself as a consultant. You care, but not that much. You just keep showing up, you be present, ask questions, make suggestions, fail, become a good failure, and tell the truth, and then let go. See you tomorrow. And then you show up, be present, tell the truth, let go. See you tomorrow. So these are the things we need to talk about. What can we do to take care of ourselves as we go through this change? What are those old recreational activities and interests and relationships we can connect with? And what are you going to do? And when are you going to start? Okay, so let's take a look at mistakes we make in dealing with change. One of the mistakes we make in dealing with change is failing to manage the stress. And if you don't manage the stress, you're not going to make it through the change. And of course, you can take a stress management seminar. They talk about its alarm stage. You inherited this from our ancestors 40, 50, 60,000 years ago. And our response is a fight or flight mechanism. Hit the shower or go to work. Or you hit the snooze button, get some more sleep. But at the end of the day, we're exhausted. I mean, we just keep going through that stage, especially in change, over and over and over again. And you first get tired, and then psychological fatigue. You get grumpy, you get short. My wife says I get touchy when I get psychological fatigue. Can you imagine me getting touchy? I don't get touchy. I go into denial. I say, I'm not touchy. You're touchy. The wife thinks I'm being touchy. But we all have a psychological fatigue factor that we can recognize. Many of us, it's mindlessness or thoughtlessness. On your way home, you think, oh, that's right, I need to pick up a gallon of milk. Next thing you realize, you pull up to the garage, doggone, I didn't pick up any milk. So you go back to the grocery store, and then you're walking up and down the aisles of the grocery store trying to figure out why I'm in a grocery store. So you grab some paper towels, they never go bad. Grab some toilet paper, you can always use that. In the checkout line, someone in the next line has milk, so you go back to the park corner store, get your milk. Next thing you realize, you're pulling into the parking lot back at work. You're on your way home. You ever walk into a room, can't remember why? Second stage of burnout. 16 days a year work lost, according to OSHA at that point. Physical fatigue, people get sick. Psychological fatigue, people get hurt. Stumbling over things, running into each other, having accidents. And then the last is spiritual fatigue, was a sense of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of escape. Don't feel confident on the job anymore. Not winking at yourself in the mirror anymore. Sick of your coworkers, sick of your customers. Just sick of it. I think the best way to tell you this spiritual fatigue is, I think it's CBS. There's a TV show. And the entire TV show is a bunch of stories about people that have run away to another part of the country for 5 or 10 years, and none of their family and friends can find them. And as you're watching that TV show, you're wondering if you could do that. Just take cash. Credit cards and checks are too easy to trace. Take all the cash you can find. That's the last stage of burnout. Now, burnout isn't pretty. If you truly do become burned out, according to the research by Dr. K.W. Sender, it's not something to recover from some Fridays off through the summer, some days off over the holidays. It may take 2 to 4 years to recover from burnout. It might be the most important 2 to 4 years of your life, your kid's life, your parents' life, so don't want you to become burned out. So you got to be well fed, well rested, well exercised. Make sure you do that. Do some deep breathing for relaxation. Go on a walking break at lunch instead of sitting around drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes. Go for a walk. Use music. Sing if you have a good voice. Cry by yourself. Get a hobby. But make sure it's significantly different than what you're doing on the job. If things aren't going well at work, you can fall back on a different identity, still like yourself personally, even if things are a little bit bumpy professionally. And then psychologically, too, put together a past accomplishments reference, a list of 25 success stories where you were the hero or heroine in every one of them. And you'll see this next challenge or obstacle that you're facing through change, just an opportunity to get something else on the list, but it'll give you that boost that you're much more talented, much more successful than what you're currently facing. And then positive visualization, instead of imagining things that are going to go bad, imagine things that are going to turn out just fine. And then positive affirmation. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, doggone people like me. You keep saying things like that, you could be a U.S. Senator instead. Anyway, alternate interpretations. Get in the habit of saying at least. Maybe when you leave here, the street lights aren't working and they're all blinking red, so you get ready to go, somebody blows through the red light, you jam on your brakes, at least they didn't hit me. Maybe things aren't going well at work right now, but at least I still have a job, that's right. Maybe things aren't going well in my marriage right now, but at least I
Remember the milk.
remember the milk, that's right. And I'm picking up some wine and beer on the way home. It helps a little bit. And then quality time, you want to make sure you have quality time just for yourself, to just kind of idle down. Now, we used to think quality time was with family and friends, but I taught family communication for a couple of years at Metropolitan State. And in a book called Family Communication, written by Dr. Kathleen Gelman, she discovered 41% of the stress we feel is caused by our family. So my suggestion is get away from them every once in a while. They cause half your stress. And then give yourself a nickname that you like. Not the nickname other people have given you. Give yourself a nickname that you like. My nickname for me is Welchie. I don't know what it is. Whenever I call myself Welchie, I feel a little bit better. And I never realized how powerful this was until the first time I worked with the Department of Corrections. I don't know if you have any family members that are correctional officers, but I'll tell you what, first time I worked with them, I thought they ate their young. I was giving a presentation up in St. Cloud, they're getting a new warden, there's going to be some changes, and they didn't want any. So I'm going to the front of the room saying, come on, Welchie, let's go. Come on, Welchie, let's go. So the presentation stunk. Wow, that's Welchie's fault, not mine. I'm not suggesting you should have a split personality, but man, you can manage a lot of stress if you do. But what I'd like you to do is have a little nickname in mind, so when you face a challenge, have to make a tough decision, you say, come on, Welchie, let's go. And it'll give you just a little bit of a psychological hiccup, and you'll make that choice. You'll make that decision. It'll break that personal relationship with a professional responsibility to make a decision and get something done. Otherwise, somebody else should take over your position. So you want to make sure you give yourself a nickname that you like to move you in the direction that you need to go. Okay, so let's take a look at some other mistakes we make. Joining the anti-change crowd. Some people decide simply not to change. I learned this a long time ago. Animal, you got a bit and bridle, some leather straps. The more you slap it on the ears, the more you cuss and swear. more likely it's going to scrape you off on a tree or a barn door on the way in. So sometimes when your industry is changing, you might have to ride the horse in the direction it's headed. And then acting like a victim, throwing a pity party, inviting other people to attend and talk about how helpless you feel and how hopeless it is, doesn't make you very attractive as a leader. And then playing the new game the old way, can't do that, can't run two systems. So you got to figure out what's the test of necessity. What do you really need to do or not? Will the customer notice? Will our competition notice? And then appropriateness. Who in the organization can do this? If we don't have anybody who outside can do this, then hire them to do this. That's the test of efficiency. You just delegate to somebody else to figure out how you can improve that process. And then request a low-stress work environment, take the pressure off. That's mortgaging the future. If you think it's tough now, it'll get tougher later if we keep procrastinating. And then, of course, just, oh, get out of here, go black. Okay, make that feeling of, where are you going? Trying to control the uncontrollable. I'll put it this way. Let's say you get back to work this afternoon. There's some things bugging you. Not even bugging. Why don't you sit down with a piece of paper and say, what's bugging me? So write down everything you think of that's bugging you. You think, that person bugs me. I don't like this policy. I think about it, I don't like that person either. And I don't like this situation. Then you ask the question, is this controllable? Do I have some impact, some influence? Now, if there's something you can do about it, put a C in front of those things, get them on a list of things to do today and get them done. Schedule a meeting, make a phone call, send an email. Now, if there's anything else left on the list, you've just declared those uncontrollable. That's just the way it is. That's life. Those are cards you're dealt. That's how they played out. Life's tough for everybody. Get over it. How'd you like to work with me every day? But sometimes you just have to ask that question, is this controllable? We're not pacing yourself. The industry's running. We're jogging. Not, you got to get in step. Continuing to do the old and the new, it's exhausting. Being cautious, we freeze like a deer in the headlights, and then reality hits. You got to keep moving. Being afraid of the unknown, I don't know why I have that on there. Human beings are successful 95% of the time. 19 out of 20 times what you've attempted in your life, you have attained. Can you imagine going down to the casino, pushing the buttons on a one-armed bandit, paid out 19 out of 20 times? That's how you invest your time and money. That's the return you get in investment in yourself. I used to run around for years telling people they should invest 5% of their gross income in a good library. I always said gross income because there were years I didn't have a net income, and I wanted to make sure I practiced what I was preaching. So you got to make sure that you develop the skills you need to protect your career. Then we have making a big deal out of little things. Major attention to minor problems. I had a mentor years ago, Paul Day, that used to call this pole vaulting over mouse turds. I'll tell you what, if you're going to take a stand on something as ridiculous as that, you're going to stake your career on that, you better be quite careful with that choice. And then psychologically disengaging from your work, where you hear yourself saying, I have to, or I should, or I must. Not very motivating to guilt yourself into it, but if you say, I get to, I want to, I look forward to, changes the attitude, changes their action. Avoiding new challenges, not changing the full contact sport. You got to get involved, you got to get the skill training, otherwise you won't be able to protect yourself in the career. And then get all the answers, all the directions. Hey, they're still making it up, whether it's Washington, D.C., or Madison, or St. Paul, so we have to be flexible. I always tell my clients I'm flexible. I'm no longer limber, but I am flexible. And that's what we need to be in our industry and organization overall. And then believing caring administration or caring management should keep you comfortable. I think it'd be about the most cold-blooded thing they ever did, because that means they really don't care whether you develop the skill and talent that you need to protect your career and your industry you're in. They should probably keep the pressure on and give you the resources you need. Currently I'm teaching a class at Anoka Ramsey Community College, and our topic is on diversity. And we go through, this little context, high context, whether it's individualistic, collectivist, whether it's, all those different delineations between cultures. And I say, don't always surprise me when someone works with somebody from a different ethnic background that they don't pick up a couple of books and read them, or pick up some documentaries or movies and watch them, or blow the dust off the Encyclopedia Britannica and learn something about the history of that country. And often the students will want to be outside my work hours. Well, okay, and then you'll have plenty of time outside your work hours when you lose your job. Why would you not invest time in relation? We spend more time with the people we work with than the people we live with, and we claim we love them. So I think we do a little bit of work. We should be able to overcome any change, any challenge that we face in our career or in our job. Now, the rest of your handout are new work behaviors that I think guarantee success. They're pretty well filled out. It gives you some examples. The one I would really like you to consider, though, is somewhere around 12 or so. Let's see if I can zip through here. You don't need me to read this to you, do you? I'm not. Okay, good. Okay, I want to go here. This one, number 7. Think broadly, consider the big picture. I would like you to get some mentors, not mentor, but mentors. First of all, I'd like you to recognize people that you respect inside your organization, outside your organization. That's it. One inside, one outside. So the person can give you the inside track, somebody else from the outside can give you some objectivity. Then I'd like you to find somebody that's significantly older than you and somebody significantly younger than you. So the only difference is age. The older person can give you sage advice, say, that's not a big deal, don't worry about that. You know, I've seen that before, this is how I handle it. And then the younger person can help you with technology and those changes and those adjustments, so you can use them as a resource. And then somebody that's a winner and somebody that's a loser. Now, whatever that winner's doing, ask if you can be part of it. Whatever they're reading, get a copy of it. Whatever they're thinking, consider that. And then that loser, whatever they're reading, take that away, give them something else to read. Whatever they're doing, stop them. Whatever they're thinking, have them reconsider. But learn that information and share it with the person that's struggling, and you become their mentor and guarantee, or at least help them to become more successful themselves. So the bottom line is this. If I was an actor, I get paid to play a role. Guess what? At work, we get paid to play a role. Let's say I didn't make my living giving speeches and seminars. Let's say I made my living as an actor, and instead of this being a luncheon, it was a Shakespearean play. I'm an actor in that play, and I know I just don't want to do it today. I don't want to put on the little booties. I don't want to put on the tights. I don't want to put on the frilly shirt, and I don't want to go bounding across stage. You have $50 tied up in your ticket for the Shakespearean play, and I'm on stage doing this. To be or not to be, that's the question. Where art thou? Do you feel like you got your money's worth? I demand your money back. If I was an actor, I get paid to play a role. Guess what? At work, you get paid to play a role. You know all the characters. Just giving you all your lines, all your stage directions. Now all you need to do is play your part. Now, if you have any questions anytime on anything in that handout, I don't care if it's 2 days, 2 months, 2 years from now, you go ahead and call me. I got enough baby boomer in me. I'll answer the phone. I'll call you back. The least I can do is you've been trapped in this room with me for 35 minutes. Anybody have any questions at this time? We have a couple of minutes. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any concerns? Anybody I need to apologize to? Anybody have any questions? I'll hang around as long as you like. I'm going to turn the program back over to Jeff. Great meeting all of you. Working with you.